Welcome to the Hollywood Scholar. I'm Jed Morgan, and I just finished the Doctor Who 60th anniversary episode 2, The Wild Blue Yonder. And I'm very conflicted when it comes to this episode because, to my absolute genuine shock, it was kind of good. There were moments that I was genuinely interested in. The writing was sound, and it makes the Starbase so much worse because it proves Russell T Davies is capable of good writing in the current day and age. He's still able to give us good episodes of Doctor Who. Now, I'm not saying this was a great episode. When you compare it back to the original Tennant run, it's probably low end compared to the worst Tennant run episodes, but it had a lot of quality that I wasn't expecting. It is without doubt the best episode of Doctor Who in at least 5 years, maybe even going back to a lot of the Capaldi era, with the exception of the end of season 10 with the two-parter and, of course, Twice Upon a Time. But there were a lot of great writing in it, with dialogue, character motivations, character writing, and then, of course, David Tennant and Catherine Tate were stealing the scene, not just as themselves, but as alternates. But before I get any further, there will be spoilers ahead, so spoiler alert. The Wild Blue Yonder is very interesting because it starts out very weak and just baffling, off the wall crazy, and doesn't have anything to do with anything, and that portion of the episode is rather terrible. But the general plot description is the TARDIS is broken, it can send them anywhere in time and space, and they end up on this ship beyond the end of the universe where there's literally nothing. It's this long, large ship, there's a lot of weird stuff going on, and then they discover duplicates of themselves that are mimicking them, trying to match them. There's some conflict between them, trying to decide who's the real one, who's the fake Doctor, who's the fake Donna, and there's a lot when it comes to that. And of course, some chase sequences, and ultimately comes down to the original pilot of the ship. She blew herself out an airlock to end herself in Minecraft to prevent those monsters from reading her, because those monsters, all that they could hear from our universe was war. And as much as I'm not a big fan of the idea that all humans do or other species do is war, I don't think that's what it was trying to say. It's just war is very, very loud. So someone at the end of the universe, that might be the only thing that they can intercept, the only perception they have of our universe, and they want to come to our universe and win our games of war. So they're copying us, trying to figure out how to be like us so that they come back to the universe and defeat us, which is a very interesting monster motivation. And so they're trying to copy the Doctor and Donna so they can figure out why the ship is still moving, where it's going, what the plan is, what the original pilot of the ship was trying to do when she ended herself, because she was setting something up, and it ultimately leads down to these creatures. They don't do slow, and they set that up to the entire episode, is they can't do slow. And so she put this plan into motion, which takes 3 years to turn the ship into a bomb to destroy these creatures. And it all revolves around this robot that is taking one step every hour or so. We don't exactly get the perfect timeline, and the ship is slowly transforming itself over the course of 3 years. And the ultimate conclusion is the Doctor making it blow up early to get the creatures before they can fully copy the Doctor and Donna. And of course, Dr. Donna get away, get back to Earth, and meet Wilfred Mott, who is in this episode. And it was very heartfelt. They didn't ruin his character at all. I fully expect they will in the Giggle. And then there was a big explosion, and something crazy is about to happen in the Giggle. As much as that plot, at least to me, sounds interesting and came across very interesting, I want to make this very clear. I don't believe this changes anything. This doesn't change anything. It's still RIP Doctor Who to me. One good episode, or maybe an occasional good episode from David Tennant, Catherine Tate, and Russell T Davies moving forward with Shudigawa doesn't change the fact that they re-cement the Timeless Children in this episode. They re-cement the Flux in this episode, which are the big universe-destroying, canon-destroying events in Doctor Who. So this still isn't Doctor Who. This still isn't the character that we fell in love with. But even with that criticism, they did approach those scenes with a degree of talent to the best that you could approach the Timeless Children in a semi-good episode of Doctor Who. But I want to make it very clear, this doesn't change my opinions. Fully expect the Giggle to be terrible. Fully expect that the Shudigawa seasons aren't going to be good. But it does beg the question, why were the studio and Russell T Davies himself so dead set on not letting the audience see anything about this episode? They kept it very much under wraps. We didn't get a plot description. We got a little bit of a teaser. We got a few clips, but it was so minimal that even Russell T Davies talked about it, and he mentioned, I wanted to see if it was possible. Were they trying to hide something? That was my initial reaction when I found out that they were hiding so much of the episode. That might have been shame, might have been, oh, this is really bad. But there was a lot of quality in this episode from just the basic writing elements that I don't know what they would have been ashamed of. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below about why they might have tried to conceal so much of this episode. But yes, this isn't going to change anything. It was mediocre compared to the rest of Doctor Who from the Tennant era and the Matt Smith era, but it was substantially better than what we're used to. So it is a bit of a drought and famine situation where the first drop of water tastes like heaven. But I do genuinely believe that there were moments of quality within the Wild Blue Yonder. But a few things that I want to talk about when it comes to negative. The worst part of this episode was the very beginning. The episode starts with, for some reason, instead of crashing directly onto that spaceship, which the majority of the episode takes place on, the very opening before the credit sequence is with a Native American, or at least non-white, Isaac Newton, who's talking in the worst Old English accent with some of the worst dialogue I've ever seen. Like someone who doesn't understand how people in 1666 used to talk. He goes outside, sits beneath an apple tree, apple falls on his head, and the Doctor and Donna are the ones responsible for Isaac Newton figuring out gravity. Because when they step out of the TARDIS, they're in the tree above Isaac Newton and they're hanging out the door, which the CGI looks terrible. It just looks really weird. This whole scene is awful. And they make a joke, is like, I'm sure you'll understand the gravity of the situation, but Isaac Newton doesn't hear them right and figures they meant mavity. And when they get to the ship, and throughout the episode, Donna keeps saying mavity instead of gravity. That was just nonsense. That was terrible. This episode would be substantially better if it started after the credit scene. We didn't need Isaac Newton. We didn't need right after the credit scene, the Doctor and Donna talking about how hot they both thought Isaac Newton was. We didn't need a race-swapped Isaac Newton. It just felt forced in like a reshoot. It did not need to be stapled on to a genuinely okay, good, even episode. It came out of nowhere and was very, very strange. Going along with that, there were a lot of moments of bad CGI throughout the episode, specifically with this massive hallway that was at the center of this ship. It just looked really rough because of how white it was, but the rest of the CGI was really good. We saw the exterior of the ship with the drone moving around it. That CGI was good. Some of the CGI with the alien duplicates of the Doctor and Donna, because they can grow and stretch and they're not perfect replicas, so they stretch and bend in weird places. Some of that CGI was very rough, but it was still interesting that I was able to get over that, obviously, and it was still genuinely enjoyable even when the CGI wasn't amazing. Of course, there were a few other moments as well. The CGI had a lot of issues with how substantial the budget is for current Doctor Who. It's inexcusable that the CGI is that bad. Of course, if this were still back in the day, low budget CGI, low budget Doctor Who, that would be totally fine, ignorable even, but that's not the case anymore. They have so much money. They have the BBC, they have Sony, and they have Disney giving them money for the production of Doctor Who currently. So it's unforgivable that their CGI was this bad, and it felt like everything else from Disney where their CGI is just atrocious. My final major criticism of the episode comes in a conversation between the fake Donna and the real Doctor when they're talking about his history. They mention the timeless children. Donna mentions, you weren't born on Gallifrey, you don't know where you come from. It's like, how do you know this? And she mentions the flux and how apparently half the universe was destroyed, even though in the episode the flux is very clearly stated to have destroyed everything except for Earth. They made it half the universe instead, and it's still left unresolved. That was very shoehorned in, felt just like a, hey, we're not going to retcon any of this, fans, we're not going to do it. And it's not something that we needed to be shoved into this episode to ruin otherwise a great episode. It wasn't quite enough for me because the Doctor was still well written in that moment. David Tennant was still giving a great performance, feeling the weight of destroying or being partially responsible for the destruction of half the universe. There was still good acting in it, that it, of course, isn't something that should have been in the episode at all, but they did something with it that was genuinely positive. And a big criticism that I had of the Star Beast was the political messaging in it. When it came to Wild Blue Yonder, there was virtually none of it. Even the mentions to Donna's family, which could have been used as a vehicle for more of the propaganda from the Star Beast, it wasn't. I was totally fine with all the references to Donna's family because it was all about how they're going to react without Donna. She thinks she's stranded on this ship for the rest of her life. She'll never go home, at least at that moment that seems to be the situation. And so she imagined, oh, my sweet husband, he's really lovely. Oh, he'll do this. Rose needs to get on with her life. And just the way Donna talked about her family, it was perfectly integrated in and had no seeming political motivation. There are a couple moments, like the reason behind the timeless children, of course, and of course the Doctor calling Isaac Newton hot, something that we didn't need. We don't need the Doctor to be omnisexual, pansexual, anything like that, or attracted to really anyone, but they weren't enough to ruin the episode for me, and I will not call this episode woke. I'm very confident in saying that this episode was not woke. A few minor things in it that seemed politically motivated, but they were so small that they were virtually ignorable, and I don't have a problem with them. At this point, the biggest praise I can give this episode is if we got rid of that opening, if we got rid of the Timeless Children references, I could very happily slot this into Series 4 and watch it again willingly and say, this is just something that happened along the many adventures that Donna and the Doctor had during Series 4. It's not connected to anything else, and I'd be happy with that because there was a lot that I enjoyed about it, especially the mystery and how it was built up and the subtlety of it. Yes, it wasn't as subtle as a film by Christopher Nolan, for example, but it was subtle to the point that I was surprised they didn't come out and say, oh, this guy's fake, this one's a fake Doctor, or this is a fake Donna. They let the audience figure it out to a certain point. Yes, they showed, but they didn't blatantly like, hey, you figure it out, you Dumbo, this is what's happening. No, they let a breath of cold air come out of Donna. She's like, it's something weird. She's talking to the Doctor. There's a few little things, and then we cut to the Doctor talking to the fake Donna, having a very similar situation. And it was just slowly built up. It was more subtle than I expected. It can't genuinely be called subtle because it does switch between scenes to the point that the audience immediately figures out what's going on. But it trusted the audience and did a little bit of show, don't tell. And that's something that genuinely surprised me, is that their willingness to show and not tell. And that's something that was very apparent through most of the episode. There were a lot of little details that led to the mystery being revealed at the end, what the plan of the original pilot was, why everything's going so slow, the nature of these creatures, and the suspense that accompanied that was intriguing, genuinely intriguing. And so as soon as the Doctor and Donna got to the main bridge at the beginning of the episode, when he's flitting with the computers trying to figure it out, and the mystery's been presented, hey, an airlock opened 3 years ago, we're at the end of the universe, and the actor's performance just pure selling the fact that this is frightening, even to the Doctor. This is terrifying. And then, of course, we get the monsters, who are mirrors of Doctor and Donna, so we get some good character moments from both of them as they have a little bit of self-reflection. And that's something that we've needed for a very long time. And then, of course, we have some stupid stuff like the duplicates growing to the point where they fill up the entire massive corridor down the center of the ship. It looked cheesy, but it was fun cheesy. I was smiling during that scene. And there were other funny scenes like the Doctor pouring out salt in front of these creatures and saying, hey, if you're a monster, if you're a goblin, if you're a vampire, you have to bend down and count all of these. Of course, that's not the accurate version of the theology, of the mythology when it comes to dropping salt in front of a supernatural being, but it wasn't supposed to be. It was merely a distraction method to trick these creatures to thinking, oh, I might actually have to do that, because they don't know any better. They're learning as they're going. So it was a neat, almost clever tactic that he used. I saw the Doctor being clever and not just doing gobbledygook tech nonsense to pretend that the Doctor's being smart. He genuinely came up with a very unique solution to a situation that I was shocked by. I can call this episode good, and I am more shocked than anybody watching this video to say that. I found myself smiling. I found myself enjoying it. The chemistry between Catherine Tate and David Tennant was astonishing, just like it's always been. Dr. Donna is one of my favorite eras of Doctor Who during Series 4, probably only second to the Matt Smith, Amy run of his first season. So Series 5 and Series 4 are my two favorite seasons of Doctor Who across all 55 years. Yes, I said that correctly. 55 years. And I got to see that genuinely brought to life. Now, again, this isn't going to come back. This is 100% a bait and switch. I believe the giggle will be terrible. And I have good reason to believe that because of the press releases, because of Russell T Davies constantly saying, my priorities are propaganda, not storytelling. So this doesn't change my opinion, and I hope this review doesn't change anyone's opinions about that either. But I have to be honest, because that's what I value most in my review space, is that I'm honest about the way I think and feel. And I honestly believe this episode had some genuine quality to it. Yes, there are issues with the CGI. Yes, it does get a little cheesy at some points. Yes, the references to the Timeless Children and the Flux could be cringe and were completely unnecessary, and I wish they had retconned both of those events, but it did something with them. And I felt tension. I felt care for these characters. I was worried about what's happening to them. I was invested in the story, and that's something I haven't been able to say about Doctor Who since Peter Capaldi left the role. And that's shocking to me. So I have to praise this episode for what it gave to me. Of course, the Wild Blue Yonder portion of the episode still doesn't make any sense. I haven't mentioned it yet, but the title comes from apparently when the TARDIS dropped them off, it randomly started playing the US Air Force song Wild Blue Yonder for no apparent reason. And then when it showed up back at the end of the episode, once it had repaired itself from the damage that Donna's coffee had done to it, it was playing the song again. And throughout the episode, they talk about it a little bit. Donna has a history with this song, with a fight between Wilfred and her choir teacher about kids should not be listening to the song, which is something I disagree with, but I can see that being a character thing for all these characters that still made sense, and they still did something with it, especially because the whole thing was these other universe, these beyond universe creatures, all they could hear from the universe was war. So it did fit in to a certain extent into the narrative, but it still doesn't make sense why the TARDIS started playing it. So that's a massive plot hole that begins a lot of the meta around it, a lot of the narrative around how all this connects with the idea of the story was presenting. It was built on sand, and so that brings down the episode quite a bit. There seems to be no explanation for why it randomly starts playing this song, which is applicable to their situation and applicable to Donna as a character, but they still managed to pull out a good episode from that sandy foundation. I, of course, can't hop on enough. This won't change anything, but I will be giving it an honest review. I have to give this episode a 6 out of 10. And that is a massive increase in quality from the predecessor, the Starbase, which I only gave a 2. And I felt I was being generous with that. But this episode could slot in amongst the worser, more mediocre episodes from the previous eras when I considered the show good and one of the best television shows ever made. It could fit amongst the worst of the best, and that is not something to be ashamed of, and it's not something to discount, because this episode had some great moments in it that I genuinely enjoyed. Again, not looking forward to the giggle, but I will be reviewing it, and I will be putting out a watch along very soon for Wild Blue Yonder with me and a panel of incredible people who watched it all together, and you'll get our reactions as soon as I can edit it down for copyright. But that's all I have for today. I'd love to hear all your thoughts down in the comments below. What did you think about Wild Blue Yonder? Of course, I imagine most of you don't think this is going to change anything. It's absolutely a bait and switch, 100%. But I genuinely did enjoy it, and I'd love to hear what you guys thought in the comments down below. But that's all I have for today. I will see you guys in the next video. Anon.
Hey, yo, are you feeling what I'm doing up in here? Oh, I know you are. Do you miss all the good, compelling stories that we used to get back in Hollywood that they ain't putting down no more? I know you missing it. So check out my book series, Odyssey of a Phoenix, a mythological epic about philosophy, morality, and modern-day mental illness issues, baby. Book 1, Down in Flames. Book 2, Apocalypse Then. These are currently on sale. What are you waiting for? Get your hands on them. And we got Book 3, Kill the Dark, is coming down the pipeline. Just wait for all the good stuff that's dropping. You ain't gonna be disappointed, fam.